Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. With the recent release of the Ontario budget and the continued restrictions on Canadian small businesses due to COVID, it is timely to get an update from Dan Kelly, who is head of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, welcome back to the program.
Happy to be with you.
So first off, the Ontario budget, what were the highlights for you?
Well, there was some good news. Given the length of the lockdowns that we've been experiencing in Ontario, the government did double the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. This is a grant of $10,000 to $20,000 that was given to businesses that were subject to lockdown orders in December 2026, on December 26th. And for many of them, of course, they remain in lockdown even today. So it is good news that the government has recognized that $10,000 or $20,000 may have helped them cover a month, but it may not have helped them cover, in some cases, the 300 days that many of these businesses have been locked down. So they've doubled the amount of the grant that will help relieve some of the debt that they are inheriting. The gap, though, on that program is still they have not moved to fix the eligibility requirements. So thousands and thousands of businesses are getting nothing from that grant program. If you weren't subject to that specific order on December 26th, you don't qualify for any of that support. So a dry cleaner that has seen their clients disappear, a catering company that has no events, just because those businesses are allowed technically to be open, they get zero, and that's unfair.
So just sticking to Ontario for a moment, we are going to get to, I know you're a national organization and we will get to the national picture as well, but just stick to Ontario for a moment. What do you see as the prognosis for Ontario's small businesses?
It's really grave. Gosh, I mean, the COVID has hit businesses from coast to coast incredibly hard, but Ontario businesses harder than almost any, insofar as the government has been lockdown happy. Ontario has engaged in these long-term lockdown strategies. Many provinces lock down their business community. That's not a question. Mm-hmm. But only Ontario has basically just kept businesses in perpetual lockdowns, particularly in the Toronto area. So restaurants and dry cleaners, restaurants have been, for indoor dining, have been locked down for almost 300 days. Gyms in the Toronto Peel region have been locked down for 280, 290 days. Hair salons, nail salons have been locked down for 200 plus. How on earth are these businesses to survive? A $10,000 or $20,000 grant doesn't go very far if you're still paying your monthly expenses and have no revenue.
I've noticed, again, I'm being a bit Ontario-centric, forgive me. Maybe this is common in other provinces as well, but the Ford government seems to be adopting a strategy where they're keeping in place the various, color-coded, different situations in different parts of the province, but they're loosening the rules within those color codes. Have you noticed the same thing?
Yeah, they have, and that's been justified in many respects because COVID case counts were coming down quite steadily in parts of the province. So they couldn't continue to keep the number of business restrictions in place, given that COVID was grinding to really low levels in lots of parts of the province. That made sense, but they still, in Ontario, have used lockdowns more than almost any jurisdiction in the world. Toronto and Peel's lockdowns have been the longest in North America. And, business owners are, unlike the first wave, they're questioning whether this makes sense. If lockdowns were such a great strategy to keep COVID at bay, why would we be keeping them in place for hundreds and hundreds of days? Remember, at the beginning of this, a year ago, we were told that we needed to lock down everybody for 2 weeks in order to bend the curve.
Yeah, that's right. Well, flatten the curve. Yeah.
It's just been brutal. And so these near perpetual lockdowns have not been terribly effective, have been the only public policy intervention the government seems to be capable of making. Other provinces have used lockdowns, but a bunch of other measures to try to keep COVID in check, and they've been more successful.
Yeah. We're going to continue our conversation. There's obviously a lot to talk about with Dan Kelly here of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Stay with us. We're going to take a brief commercial break. We'll be right back with you. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Dan Kelly of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, these business restrictions, to a greater or lesser extent, are still with us throughout the country. What are you hearing from your members? Let's put it that way. You and I can talk about it, but it's really your members, these small and medium-sized businesses, and their stories. So help us by telling some of their stories.
Yeah, look, it's really serious. You can believe it. As we sit, COVID restrictions in place for over a year. Still, an entire third of businesses across Canada are fully or partially shut down. A year later, it is absolutely incredible, and the damage that that's inflicting is significant. But even some of the businesses that have been allowed to reopen are telling us that they're not dramatically better off either, because governments right across Canada, federal, provincial, and local, have all kept the message up that you've got to stay at home at all costs. Yeah. You're not supposed to leave your house for non-essential purposes. And that message is universal across the country. As a result, people have seen their sales just fall off a cliff compared to normal levels. So even those businesses that are open are struggling. Well, some of the sectors that have been hit the hardest. I mean, gyms right across Canada have all sorts of restrictions, capacity controls. Some places they're allowed only 10 people in a giant space. Even the ones that are open don't have a pathway to profitability. Hair salons in the GTA, for example, in the Toronto area, have been shut down endlessly, and still in many parts of Canada are subject to shutdowns. Events-related businesses, their recovery is going to be dramatically long. I have concert promoters that are telling us that they're not booking anything till 2022. So, it's looking grim for the fall. And we see some provinces, Saskatchewan, which has, I think, been one of the leading provinces in trying to keep restrictions reasonable, they just put in place new restrictions in Regina just in the last little bit. So we're still in lockdown nation right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the issues, isn't it? The lack of ability to plan for the future, because you just don't know when the restrictions would likely to be lifted. And of course, we have the vaccine rollout happening. That's good news, but we've got these new variants. That's bad news. And so you're seeing almost like a paralysis in government in terms of forward planning on this. Is that your take on it too?
It's true. And look, I mean, I sympathize with governments, public policy makers, healthcare officials, because it is hard for any of us to plan till Tuesday, never mind the next number of months. What we want to see, though, is a plan to steadily reopen the economy. Even if we're not able to remove some of the restrictions today, having the plan as to when we can remove certain restrictions will be enormously helpful. What's going to prompt government, for example, to switch the gears and tell Canadians, okay, it's safe to return to your office, it's safe to take a vacation, or remove the border restrictions so that perhaps people from the U.S. and international countries can come to Canada for a vacation? What are the road marks that they think are necessary before we can go down that path? These are some of the questions that are on the minds of business people as they start to plan out. And tourism operators asking, is there any hope of having an interprovincial guest or an international guest in the summer or in the fall? Lots and lots of unknowns, tons of uncertainty. That does not make for a good economic set of circumstances either.
So that seems to echo something that opposition leader, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole was saying in his caucus, saying, look, we know you can't give us an exact date. It's dependent on a number of factors, but at least present a plan for the Canadian economy for reopening. Is that similar to what you're saying?
Yeah, look, I'm glad he's saying that, because that is absolutely sensible advice. I wish provincial Conservative premiers would actually go down that road a little bit as well. And we're seeing zero of that from the Ford government, for example. But yeah, I mean, look, very few business owners are calling me, telling me that we should be Texas tomorrow and remove every restriction, including mask bylaws. I have a few of those as members of CFIB, but not too many. Most business owners are saying, look, we get that there's a deadly pandemic. We get that there's going to be the need for ongoing restrictions of some sort, but give us a pathway to profitability. Allow us to at least eke out a bit of an income until such time as COVID restrictions can be removed. But tell us what the next number of months might look like, even if you have to make some changes along the way. Uh, but that's not happening. We're
Yeah.
not getting a strong sense of what governments would need to see to tell people to go back to offices, to go to the theater for an event or have a bar mitzvah. I mean, these are some of the things that we'd like to get some advice from government on.
Dan, I got to come back to one of the things you said. Again, you get these mixed messages, stay at home, but shop local. That's just one example. It's kind of bizarre. But I do want to ask about shop local because that's something that I've seen in my own community in Muskoka and many others advertising it's time to shop local, i.e. don't just do everything on Amazon, I guess. Is that campaign helping? Is it helping our small businesses?
It is. Look, businesses have been put through the ringer, as we talked about, and for retailers in particular, gosh, this is just accelerated trends that existed before COVID. So more and more Canadians are shopping online. Gosh, when my parents are doing grocery shopping from online retailers and buying things on Amazon, that things have moved a long way in the market. How much of that is going to come back is anyone's guess. We probably had 5 years of innovation in 1 year from an e-commerce perspective. But more small businesses are playing a role in the e-commerce world, but don't have the giant budgets of the giants like Amazon themselves. I've suggested, Tony, a couple times though that maybe we shut down the wrong end of retail. We've seen huge case counts in Amazon
Yeah.
warehouses, and yet we're pushing traffic there. Meanwhile, we're shutting down the tiny little independent bookstore with no evidence of COVID spread. But beyond that, the buy local campaigns are so important because if we want these small retailers to populate the storefronts on main streets in small towns and high streets in big cities, we're going to have to support them. They're not going to make it unless they have customers coming back, and a lot of that has to happen in person. So every dollar that we can say, you know what, I don't need to buy this on Amazon. I can buy this from the small guy down the road. That will help keep the lights on in another small business and give them a prospect of making it across the COVID finish line.
Yeah, you just mentioned 5 years in one in terms of changes in the retail sector. Are you finding small businesses, there must be some great stories of adaptive behavior going on in our small business community?
There really are. Some of them have been incredibly heartening. Innovation is often born out of necessity, and so many businesses have done that. And to be fair, Canadian small businesses were slow to go online relative to their international counterparts. So it is good news that over the past year, 150,000 merchants have moved and created an online presence.
Mhm.
Curbside pickup has been an innovation that I suspect is going to be here for some time, as many Canadians have been quite used to and like the idea of being able to call up a store, buy something, or do it online, then going and picking it up at the store, having it dropped in your car on the way home. Those kinds of innovations, I think, are going to stick around. We're not making it easy for the small guys, though. The cost of payments, for example, with credit card processing fees for online transactions, they're sky high, and we need to see those come down. Lots of ways that government can help level the playing field. All my members want is a fighting chance.
Right.
And over the last number of months in many provinces, particularly here in Ontario, the government has put in place policies that have favored the large guys, the big box stores, the multinationals, the online players over the small local independents. That's got to shift back, and that's got to happen fast.
You've got a date now for the federal budget, April 19th, I believe. Is that one of your asks for your membership?
You got it. And we've got a 6-point plan that we gave to Minister Freeland to make some changes in Ottawa. One of the big messages is that COVID isn't over, and that support programs like the CEBA loan program, the wage support program, the rent subsidy, those need to be continued even after their expiry in June, because many businesses are not going to be back, as we can plainly see. Our message to government is you continue the COVID support until you, government, can tell Canadians to return to in-store retail, return to their offices, return to travel, open the borders. When those things have happened, you can start to pull back from some of the economic supports. But until then, you just can't.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see. I think there's going to be a segment of the population, even if everything were open up tomorrow, would be reticent. So it's almost like you need a campaign to say it's okay to shop, it's safe to shop.
Tony, I actually think that's impeding us right now on the vaccine rollout.
Yeah.
Everybody's been surprised that a lot of older Canadians are not lining up or not taking their vaccine appointments even when they're offered. And I think that part of that is because we've been telling people to stay in your homes. And so when they see lineups at these max vaccination clinics, they're saying, hey, I'm just going to stay home for a while longer. And that's going to impede our recovery. So we need to change the message track at some stage if we're going to be successful in getting Canadians to return to their regular lives.
We're going to be back with our guest, Dan Kelly, after this break. Please stay with us. And we're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Dan Kelly of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, I want to take you down a different road. The yellow brick road, maybe there's Oz in the distance there, Emerald City, the stores are wide open, everybody's vaccinated. Can you foresee a big rebound for Canadian business?
Look, I'm certain that there are going to be some positives that come out of the next number of months. Canadians are tired of being locked in their basements, and they're keen to get back out. Many to go and have dinner with their friends on a patio somewhere. They're keen to go on a vacation. So yes, and many Canadians, of course, those with salaries, those that work for government, have actually come out of the COVID recession financially better off than they entered this period. And so they're armed with dollars that they may be spending to buy some new stuff, to go on a trip, etc. But I don't think this is going to be as easy as some are projecting. I'm not confident that there is going to be this big post-COVID boom, because so many businesses are going to be in the position of hanging up their keys forever. The economic damage, the carnage that has happened along the way, we have just seen the tip of the iceberg out. The average small business, I remember, has inherited $170,000 in COVID-related debt. And a lot of that is unpaid bills. So it's not even measured in bank loans or credit availability. Right. It's actually in unpaid bills to many of their creditors. When they have to start, and so people have been patient in demanding that money, but that's not going to be forever. No. And when businesses open up, let's picture it's June and your business is now open, you're able to serve customers and some are coming back. You're going to have to make enough money to pay your bills for June, and that's a bit of a gamble. But you're also going to have, as a business, the responsibility to try to make a dent in the inherited COVID debt that you've taken on. And at that point, I think businesses are going to say, look, there's no pathway back for my business to be profitable. I'm going to hang up the keys. Yeah. And when that happens in numbers, that's when the economic effects really start to take hold. So yes, there will be some winners coming out of this with a bit of a boom. But I unfortunately predict that there's going to be a huge number of losers out of COVID, businesses that are just not there. And that's a shame.
We saw StatsCan numbers recently showed 100,000 businesses went under in April 2020 alone. So that doesn't, I'm not sure we can go to the roaring 20s flappers just yet. I agree with you on that. One final point, we got about a minute and a half left. The other big hangover from this, of course, is debt levels and the pressure on taxation. So tell us what your members want to see and don't want to see when it comes to debt and taxes.
Huge concern about what may be coming at us. I mean, gosh, those bills are going to come due for Ottawa too, for provincial governments as well. All of that is going to find its way back into taxes that we as Canadians have to pay, Canadian businesses have to pay. We're already saying to the government, the federal government right now is not the time to start increasing tax rates, but they're doing that. They increased Canada Pension Plan premiums for employers and employees on January 1st. There's a carbon tax increase expected in early April, a liquor tax increase expected in Ottawa, and then to pay back some of the debt that Canada provincial governments have incurred, they're going to be looking at other forms of taxation and looking under every couch cushion.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a rough ride in the months ahead.
Are you saying that your businesses are prepared for an increased tax load? Is that what they're expecting?
I think many are saying that will happen at some stage, and it's a question as to which group of Canadians is going to be asked to dig deepest. Sadly, that's often been entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make the case to Ottawa right now that there's not a lot of capacity to start adding to the tax rates. Rumors continue about capital gains tax increases or ending, preferred policies like tax exemptions on the value of the increase in your home value. Those kinds of things would be deadly at any time, particularly deadly as we come out of a COVID recession.
Dan Kelly, that's all the time we have for today. I'm wishing you and your membership well in these troubled times, and I'm sure we'll have to have another update soon enough. But thanks for being with us.
Anytime, Tony.
For sure. Well, it's not the roaring 20s yet, not time to get those flappers out, but Dan Kelly and small businesses are still struggling. Let's hope that there are better days ahead as the summer arrives. Stay with us as we continue our discussions.